Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you. Can I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ritchie. The regular meeting of the Council Township of Springwater of April 21, 2021 come to order at 6:32 p.m. All those in favor? That's carried. Due to COVID, Council is taking the steps to have electronic council meetings. Council and staff are participating through Zoom. You can watch the meeting live by going to the township website at www.springwater.ca. You can listen on the phone if you want by dialing 647-558-0588 and using the identification code 810-9033-7554 and the pound sign. This is during the meeting, and if you would like to look at the streaming after the meeting is over, you can go to the website and view it on the Township's YouTube channel. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest, Council? Okay, are there any deputations or presentations? There are no items. We're at item 4 on the agenda, question period. Members of the public can submit questions either in writing or a request to appear on the Zoom to ask questions pertaining to items on the agenda. They contact the clerk at springwater.ca by noon of the day of the meeting if they so desire to do either of those things. Clerk Ainsworth, has there been any submissions received?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. There was one submission received for this evening's meeting from Hale Mahone of 33 Hillview Crescent in Midhurst. And his comment is regarding item 13.2 being bylaw 2021-039. And he states, "Thank you to all of council for your willingness to engage with the community about the heritage designation for the Midhurst Community Center. This designation will preserve the history and culture associated with the community center and allow it to continue to be a community hub for future generations of Midhurst residents. The next few years will mark the beginning of a busy time for Midhurst as development begins on the new neighborhoods west of our village and discussions are happening for a new community hub to serve future residents. This heritage designation will serve as an acknowledgement of the history of Midhurst and a commitment to preserving that history as the village grows. I am confident that this designation represents the township's commitment to fostering an integrated Midhurst where both history and modern amenities can coexist to make the village better."
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth, and thank you, Mr. Mahone, for your message and your input, and thank you for your ongoing support in the community through the Midhurst newsletter, the Midhurst Community Recreation Association, and the other things that you are involved with in the community. We certainly do appreciate your involvement. Thank you. We move on to 5.2 minutes of boards, committees, and organizations. Can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the floor? Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. If we could first do the adoption of council minutes, please.
Did I pass that? Yes, I did. Good get. I'm rolling through it too. 5.1 minutes of council. A mover and seconder to approve the minutes of council, please. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Moore. We have 3 of these. Any comments with respect to these? Okay, then we're moving that the minutes of the council listed herein be approved as presented. Special meeting of council, April 7, 2021, the regular meeting of council, same date, and the minutes of the special meeting of council of April 8, 2021. All those in favor? That is carried. Now we will consider the minutes of boards, committees, and organizations. Mover and seconder for those, please. Councillor Cabral, Councillor Moore. Any comments with respect to any of these? And we move that the minutes of the boards, committees, and other organizations listed herein be received as information. The Community Policing Advisory Committee of March 23rd, June 220, June 29, 220, October 7th, 220, and January 21st, 2021, and the minutes of the Elmvale Business Improvement Association Board Meeting, February 18th, 2021. All those in favor? It's carried. Correspondence and information items, there are none of those, so we move on to item 7.1. Action report option items, federal gas tax update, 2021 top-up funding. Can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the floor, please? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ma Chapman. All right. I will open this up to Director Radigan just to give an overview. It was a comprehensive report, but just anything you can add or want to add to that report, Director?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to members of council. So on March 25th, the federal government announced that it will top up the federal gas tax funding with a one-time transfer to municipalities to help prepare communities for economic recovery as a result of the pandemic. The Township of Springwater will receive a top-up allocation of $581,084. The purpose of this report is to provide funding allocation recommendations and to seek direction from council. The options provided in this report have been based on criteria that has been considered while reviewing specific projects, which include, can the work be mobilized quickly and commence during this construction season? Do we have adequate resources to coordinate the additional work? Are funds better utilized to reduce the township's infrastructure deficit? And will the options assist in achieving the 2021 capital budget goals and/or the draft roads needs study requirements? The report before you provides three viable options. Option one is to reduce the township's current infrastructure debt by funding the 2021 Lawrence Street reconstruction project. Option two, additional roads investments. This option includes roads that were deferred to the 2022 budget deliberations or have been identified as now needs as a result of the roads needs study. And option three, deferred to 2022 budget deliberations. This option allows council to review all the township's infrastructure needs all together and make informed decisions. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. I think I saw Councillor Hannah's card first and Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor. Just an observation. I would be satisfied with options 1 or 2. My preference would be option 2, in that it would demonstrate to the Springwater taxpayers that this council and staff are contributing something to the township, even though we're under this COVID pandemic crisis. But I think that option 2 would be a positive demonstration to the taxpayers. The problem I have too with not spending the money and putting it in option 3 is that going forward, any grants that are out there, sometimes we don't have success. Under this latest staff, we have been more fortunate in getting money through grants. But I think the problem with not having spent the money, if we go forward with different grants, that may have a negative impact on our ability to get future funds. So I guess my preference is option 2.
Thank you. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I like the report on option 2. It's nice to see where they've kind of went around taking a look. I like option 2, and I'd like them to take the balance, the remaining funds of the 94,000, and do the same thing that they've done. They've shown us here. If it's a $30,000 job or an 80, whatever it is, use it up. If they were to come back to council or let us know and spend that and go towards fixing roads, because I like option 2. Thank you.
Okay, other comments? Councillor Ma.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I also support option 2. I like how we divided or divvied up that fund within the township that shows our residents, like Councillor Hannah said, that we're in support of all this, and maybe even use the rest on other roads or put it towards option 1, either or, but I am supportive of option 2.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? All right, then, it seems like option 2 is the favorite, but the question is, what to do with the remaining 94,000. Councillor Ritchie made a point. Councillor Moss said put it towards option 1. We were asked to review the roads need study and come up with comments on that by, I believe, the end of next week. What are thoughts? What would council, the majority of council, like to do with respect to finalizing this option 2 and the 94,000? Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I am also in favor of option 2, clearly. With the $95,000, there are other roads that are in just as much need or just slightly under as much need as the ones that are listed. So I'd like the money to go towards additional roads projects, but maybe that are just haven't been identified for us. We need, I can think of Dobson Road North.
Okay. Maybe we could amend this to have staff go back and continue possible usage using the roads need study for the remaining $94,000.
That would work.
Councillor Cabral, Ma, and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you. And I don't know if we have anybody from Public Works online, but I'm just curious to know about the designations there when they're talking about these roadways. I noticed some of them say 6 out of 10 for pavement surface and 5 out of 10, but there's a couple there that say 8 out of 10. So I just kind of want to get a sense of what 8 out of 10 actually looks like or means.
Okay, Manager Ha, I see is on. Is that something you can address, Manager Ha?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral. So they were roads that were rated out of the road needs study. So obviously, an 8 out of 10 would be in better shape. But the recommendation being that we resurface it now and get 7 to 10 more years out of that surface, as opposed to letting it deteriorate to the point where we're having to do one lift as opposed to doing 2 or 3 to fix it up or pulverize and start all over.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Ma, and then Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a question, is there, on that road need studies, I believe there's a couple more roads that are in the now or coming up to 2022. Maybe have a look at that to see what roads we can use the 95,000 on.
Certainly.
It could be split up, could be one road. I guess
Yep.
depends on the price of it.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. My comment was just that the option 2 then be split so that the identified A through G be moving forward this evening, and then the remainder come back at a later date, not the entire resolution come back.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
That's what I think we're contemplating. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just as a consideration, I noticed that 2 of the projects on option 1, the very top 2 one is from 2018, one is from 2019. And the budget area in there is $70,000. I'm wondering if it might be something that could be utilized for the remaining 90,000 to go towards those 2 projects. They just seem to jump out 70 grand, and they're a couple, 2-3 years old, sitting in the
Where are you looking again, Councillor Cabral?
option number 1.
Yeah.
If you look at the I don't know what you call that, like a spreadsheet there. It's got project number 29-23, Howden Street, Yonge to Patterson. Total budget's 20,000. And option Kerr Street, Yonge to Shaw, phase 2 design at 50,000.
Okay. Director Radigan.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral. That spreadsheet is meant to identify the 2021 approved capital projects, and of those, how much are already using federal gas tax. We can increase those allocations if that is council's wish, but that was the purpose of that chart. Thank you.
Okay, I understand, but I do see there for the Kerr Street one, there's still an outstanding debt of $35,000. So maybe that would be a consideration. We could at least get rid of that. Just a thought. I'm happy with number 2, but since we're looking at where to put the other funds and we're looking at infrastructure, that might be an appropriate place to put $35,000 of it.
Clerk Ainsworth, then, do you have wording for incorporating option 2 and then having staff using the roads needs study identify the priorities for the remaining 94,000?
Yes, so what I would recommend is that the current motion of option 2 be amended to remove the last paragraph and then add, and that staff be directed to bring forward additional road project options for use of the remaining funds of $94,084 in conjunction with the roads needs study.
Good, excellent. Okay, we have a mover and seconder for the motion. Or Clerk Ainsworth, did you have follow-up?
Thank you. Because that would be an amendment, it would require a mover and seconder separately.
Mover and seconder. Are you requesting to speak or are you wanting to move it and second it? Councillor Cabral, go ahead.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. I just not sure whether or not that's taking in Kerr Street. That comment I made about Kerr Street, or are we looking at a completely different motion?
We're looking at having them go back and take a look at the roads needs study and determining and coming back to council with respect to recommendations for the remaining 94,000. Okay. So a mover and seconder for that. Cards up again, please. Councillor Moore, Councillor Ma, that the 2021 federal gas tax top-up funding received in the amount of 581,084 be allocated towards the roads reconstruction projects listed A through G, and continue with the other part of it, Clerk Ainsworth, please.
Thank you. And that staff be directed to bring forward additional road project options for use of the remaining funds of $94,084 in conjunction with the roads needs study.
Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Is that sufficient for that, Clerk Ainsworth? Yep. Okay, moving on to 8.1 action reports. Mover and seconder to get these on the floor, please. Councillor Moore and Councillor Ritchie. I presume we want to pull 8.2. Any questions or desire to pull 8.3 through 8.6? Councillor Ritchie?
Yes, I'd like to pull 8.4, please.
8.4 PR pull. Councillor Hannah?
8.3 and 8.5, please, just questions.
8.3, 8.5, questions, JH. Okay, so mover and seconder that the action reports item 8.2 through 8.6 be received and that the recommendations contained be approved as presented for that's premature to do that. We'll go to the questions first. 8.3 donation request, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess my observation is we do always contribute the $500 to EDHS each year. It does come before council. Council approves it. Council gets recognition for doing so. Also, it lets the residents of Springwater know that this contribution is being made from their tax dollars, and that if there are other students who attend high schools not in Springwater, obviously that's the only one is in Elmvale, but we have a number of years ago did contribute to a graduation ceremony at, I believe it was Eastview in Barrie, because the residents at the time had come forward and asked for a contribution, which was also approved. By not bringing this forward before council, as the way I interpret the report from our Director of Finance, it does not give the residents of Springwater the opportunity to be aware of what takes place and to also if there's other students going to schools in Barrie, an opportunity to also ask for a contribution. So I would suggest that this continue to come before council in the future.
Okay, other Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would suggest that that report be pulled if Councillor Hannah would like to vote against it.
Okay, 8.3 pull. All right, Councillor Hannah, 8.5.
What was that? Where I'm just reading my notes here. I can't remember what my issue was. I'll have to get back to you on it. I have to read my notes. Thank you.
Okay, so we're pulling 8.2, 8.4, and 8.3. So we have a mover and seconder that the recommendations contained therein be approved as presented. And that is 2, 3, 4, 8.5 ZB2020-006 additional residential units, 8.6 telecommunications tower, 1646 Forbes Road, with the exception of 8.2 Swaley Drain, 8.3 donation request, and 8.4 protocol and service agreement. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, let's deal with the ones we have just been talking about. Councillor Hannah, 8.3 donation request will continue. So can we have a mover and seconder to get this on the floor to further discuss? Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin. So Councillor Hannah made his point. Any further discussion with respect to this? Clerk Ainsworth, you're wanting an amendment?
No, Mayor Allen, just to make a comment.
Yes.
Thank you. Just in response to Councillor Hannah's comment and concern about this report and the fact that it wouldn't be coming in front of council, the funds, as long as they would still continue to be included in the budget, that would trigger the Director of Finance to be authorized to pay out the donation request to a maximum of $500 should the request be received from EDHS. If council would like to see something put out to the public that council has made that donation, we can include something in the council information package so that it is made available. It would not stop a request from other schools or students from Springwater at schools outside of the town to make such requests. There has been previous requests in the past. Some have been approved, some have not been approved. But if council would like to see this continue coming to council for approval, that's fine. This report was just to try to streamline the process slightly.
Thank you. Further comment? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. And again, the way I interpret the report was that it may not be coming before council, but my main objective is that by bringing it before council, it does make sure that taxpayers of Springwater are aware of what's happening, and those who do not have students attending Elmville High School will also have an opportunity to make a request before council. The way I interpreted the report was that it would be an item that would just be approved by Director of Finance. So if I misunderstood that, then that's fine, but that's how I read the report. And I think other members of council might have done the same, but I don't know. So I still suggest it should be coming before council to be approved as it is tonight.
Sorry, okay, all right. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I hadn't really thought of it that way. I thought it would probably expedite things more than anything else, given the fact that if they asked, they'd get it, and if they didn't ask, well, they wouldn't get it. But I can certainly see Councillor Hannah's point that when it does come before council, there is some dialogue, there is recognition that we are doing something for the school. It's more public, it's more transparent. And while it could have a letter included in the council information package, I'll be honest, I don't know how many folks read that, but I know there's a good number that do read the agenda. I don't know how many follow us online, but when we do have our regular meetings in a public forum, there are folks there that I think maybe it should be continued in council as well.
Okay, well, if there's no further discussion, we can take the vote on it, and if it gets defeated, it'll continue. If it gets passed, it won't. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. And just to confirm that should this motion be defeated, the status quo would then remain. And the status quo right now, it is currently, from what I understand, a line item. So it's more of a courtesy that they request. So is there a more significant change that we're looking to have then? Because from what I understand, as a line item, there is no requirement of EDHS to come, because right now it is currently a line item. It has been, from what I remember, in all the budgets that I've been part of. So are we then pulling it from the budget then to make it a donation request, or is it just the status quo?
Clarification, either Clerk Ainsworth or Director Radigan? Yes, Director Radigan.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Allen. On an annual basis, the $500 comes forward as part of the budget deliberations and part of budget process, which would require council's approval, and that process will still take place. What would happen is that this request, the report, would no longer come to council. However, a request would have to be made by the school. If the request is higher than the budget amount, it would also come back to council as well.
Okay, that clarifies. All right, we have a mover and seconder already for this. So the motion is that the report from the clerk regarding donation request, Elmvale District High School commencement awards and bursaries dated April 21, 2021 be received, and that the Director of Finance be authorized to approve the annual EDHS donation request once received to be used for commencement awards and bursaries to a maximum of $500, and that the funds continue to be included in the township's annual budget. Those in favor, all in favor? Clerk Ainsworth, did you have a point to make?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Allen. Just now thinking of the request for this year's request, should council turn down this motion at this time, a further report would have to be brought forward to the next meeting to have the funds approved. So what I would recommend is, should council wish to vote against this, to amend the motion to remove the last two paragraphs and to just simply add a paragraph stating that the 2021 request be approved.
Okay.
Correct.
Councillor Hannah?
I agree with what the clerk just said. I think that's how we need to proceed. Thank you.
Councillor Ma?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm just, I might say the same thing as Clerk Ainsworth. So if we approve this for tonight, but going forward, it would come back to us. Anyone who's requesting donations?
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, through you. So if council votes against the motion this evening, that would mean that the request would come back to council every year, even with the budgeted amounts being included in the annual budget. Should council approve this motion, then the funds would still be budgeted, but the payout would be made without a subsequent report coming to council strictly for EDHS. It would not be considered for any other school.
Follow on, Councillor Ma?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Can we amend it where we approve this for tonight and then changes to be made going forward?
Yes, we can do whatever amendment we propose. Clerk Ainsworth, okay, let me go to Councillor Cabral first, and then we'll decide the course of action. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Maybe I'm confused, but I thought a letter came before council and then we voted at it and we basically approved $500 for the commencement for them. If it comes back next council meeting, that'll be them asking us for the money and we'll approve it. This here, if we just take out the last line, really it doesn't change that much. So I'm still more supportive of not going forward necessarily with this and just having EDHS make their request and then council can approve it at a meeting.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The request has been made for this year, and that's what triggered this report. So what I'm recommending, should council wish to vote against this motion, is that the last two paragraphs be removed and replaced with, and that the 2021 request from EDHS be approved.
Yes.
Okay, everybody clear on that? All in favor of the amended? That is passed. Do we need to read the full motion or is that sufficient, Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would need a mover and seconder for the amendment.
Councillor Ma and Councillor Hannah. Is that okay? All right, 8.3, 8.4. Okay. 8.2. We want to do MVCA first or Swaley first? We'll do it in order, numerical order. So 8.2, Swaley Drain update. Mover and seconder to get this on the table. Councillor Cabral and Councillor Moore. And so I'll start by going to CAO Schmidt for a preamble on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to members of council. So you may recall back in, I believe it was early March, there was an update from myself to members of council regarding the status of this project. So since then, there's been ongoing discussions with township staff and our drainage engineer, Mr. Ken Smart, who's on the call tonight as well, in tandem with MVCA staff. So we've been going back and forth, and Mr. Smart has now, he can correct me, but I believe he has now provided two amendments, if you will, or revisions to his original proposal that was provided to the MVCA back in 2018. And we, in our last meeting with the MVCA staff, which was a couple of weeks ago, we are of the opinion that they're still not favorable to what Mr. Smart is proposing, which is, in our opinion, substantially less and or less, I guess, less intrusive on the Minising wetlands than maybe what was originally proposed. So at this stage, we've, in our discussion with the MVCA staff, we've agreed, or we've discussed going to the MVCA board on May 28th and have Mr. Smart present his revised proposal in the hopes that the board would provide a favorable support for this project. And maybe I'll leave it at that, and I will happy to hand things over to Mr. Smart to provide an update, or Mr. Buchanan, and we can talk about if we don't get favorable support, what the next steps might be should that happen. So maybe Mr. Smart can provide an update from his end.
Thank you, Mr. Smart.
Yes, am I on? Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. We can't see you yet.
Oh, okay. Oh, yep, there we are. I'll start the video.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. No, I think Mr. Schmidt has described the situation. We have tried to revise our work in the wetlands by suggesting a narrower width, but we still feel that the length has to be done as we suggested. And our interpretation of NVCA staff's response is that they still would like us to work in a lesser length, and we don't believe we can do that. And as a result, we feel that we should go to the board and present our proposal and hopefully receive the board's blessings. But I've also suggested that if council agrees that we should pursue our reports even if the board cannot give us their blessings. We feel that the project should be undertaken, and I would suggest that if council agrees, that should be our process. But it would certainly be desirable to work with NVCA rather than against NVCA. So that's why we're continuing to recommend that we try to receive their approvals in principle. We can't get their final approvals until our final report is completed, but we'd like to know that we're carrying on with the hopes or the expectation that we will eventually have their approvals.
Okay, thank you. Given their response thus far through Mr. Hebner, their CEO, what's your approach going to be to try to convince the MVCA board, Mr. Smart?
Well, I can only reinforce that the drain existed before the flooded wetlands existed. The Drainage Act requires the drain to continue to exist. It requires the municipality to maintain it. And the municipality would actually be subject to legal action if they didn't maintain it. So I think there's a legal obligation to do it. I think the intrusion has been more the wetlands on the drain than the drain on the wetlands, which I think some are saying will now occur. So we will try to point that out again. I plan to use the same presentation that I used when we discussed this with the staff on May the 6th, or April the 6th rather, with some fine tuning, but it does through aerials show the history. And we've tried to indicate that we have tried to address all concerns that we can address now of NVCA staff. And as I say, reinforce that we feel the drain should be repaired so it's functional. And I guess maybe even go so far as to say that we feel we should submit our report on that basis and see where the chips fall.
A likely question will be why such a change now? And there'll be obviously interest in the cost estimates for this and the proposed allocation of those costs. So how do you intend to handle the significant increase in what you recommend is necessary? And are you going to be showing some dollars and proposed allocations at the board meeting?
Well, the work, as we said on April the 6th, really isn't that significantly different. I think in the original presentation to the board, we were talking perhaps in the area of 800 meters of work with 500 meters near the river. Now we're talking perhaps of 950 meters of work with no work near the river. So our opinion is that it's actually a substantial improvement in what was discussed back in 2018. As far as the costs, yes, the costs are increasing because of the involvement that we've had with NVCA primarily. And we can discuss the costs. I don't believe NVCA are too concerned about the costs other than what their share would be. Right now, we're projecting perhaps a project cost of around $300,000. And we've said all along that the wetlands share would be in the area of 10%. So that's about as close as we can go in a preliminary report. It's not until you do the final report that you get into specific assessments, but I think we've done enough work that we feel fairly confident with those estimates. But as I said, as deliberations or further consultations continue, the costs are going to continue upwards as well.
Do you feel that one second, Councillor Ritchie, do you feel that the pushback on the MVCA is primarily because what they perceive to be the disturbance to the area to be remediated with what you have been proposing, or is it more a dollar issue?
I don't know. When we talk in 2018 of 800 meters of work, that was work in the wetlands. The work isn't substantially different. Now it's still work in the wetlands. I think we had the understanding back in 2018 that if we submitted a favorable natural environmental study that they would work with us. So there would be some odds and ends still to do, detailed construction plans, talks to other landowners on whose land work would occur, approval from other agencies. But those have been there from day one, and we've tried to address them. And we can't really finally address them until we do a final report. So I don't think the project itself has changed much. The cost, yeah, they've maybe gone up because there's been an escalation of cost, but I don't really think costs are the significant part of it, but I don't know. That's a question you'd have to pose to NVCA.
Well, I guess we have to anticipate what their pushback, staff's pushback, the real reason for that, because you'll have to convince the board that notwithstanding what the response has been from staff thus far, that we want the board's support to agree to go ahead with what you're recommending, basically. So I'll leave that there for now and go to Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through to Mr. Smart. Just what seems to be the hang up with the MVCA and causing such a delay?
Well, I can't read their minds. My guess is that the authority just does not want to see work in the wetlands. Whether they're concerned about the feedback or pushback they'll receive from the Friends of the Minising, I don't know, but that could be a factor. It seems to me that notwithstanding what was said back in 2018, where we were led to believe that they would work with us, and we've done works that have shown there's no reason to stop the work from a species at risk issue. It appears to come down to they just don't want us to work in the wetlands, notwithstanding that the Swaley Drain has a legal right for perhaps another 1,000 meters into the wetlands. And it just hasn't been grasped, I guess, in my opinion.
Follow on?
Mayor Allen, I believe there's a delegation going on May 28th, and I'm asking that I be part. I would like to join in that delegation and sit in as just as an observer. I'm a farmer. I'm a counselor. I have municipal drains in my ward, like the Phelpson drain. I know they're having problems with it. The train drain, we've got it flowing and it's working well. And I'd like to go as an observer as part of that delegation. Thank you.
Is this, are you referring to the presentation to the board or?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's certainly open for the public to sit in on the board meeting. You're welcome to attend.
Thank you.
Mayor
Allen?
Yes.
Just one more thing. I asked to be kept in the loop about that. So if the CAO wants to send me an email for an update, but this thing is just dragged on for so long, and it just affects the municipality in so many ways. And I thank Ken Smart for his patience, but we need to see this through, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yes, we are determined to get action on this. There's no doubt about that. Mr. Smart?
Yes, I actually think it would be very desirable, and I was going to try to bring this up at some point, if it became evident at the board meeting that Springwater Council is very supportive and desirous of this project proceeding. I think perhaps NVCA has to appreciate that council is very much behind this project, because sometimes I have the feeling that maybe they think I'm the only promoter of this project. And I think they should be aware that it's a municipality and I'm a spokesman for the municipality.
Well, we certainly can accomplish that. Councillor Ritchie, follow on.
One more last thing, Mayor Allen. I know we need to keep moving. I'd like to go, and I will be going if I'm asked to speak. I'd be more than glad to speak on my background to support the municipality, and as a farmer, if I'm asked to speak, I'd be more than glad. I got lots to say, I can tell you that. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor. Just for clarification, a question I had on the recommendation for this item was to approve the hiring of retaining a solicitor. My question be, why would we want to be retaining a solicitor before the deputation was made and before we need to register an appeal? If I'm reading the recommendation right, that's what I believe was the intent, was for us to approve the funds to retain a solicitor.
Mr. Smart?
Yes, I'd like to speak to that. I suggested in one of our discussions with Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Buchanan that we should start speaking to a solicitor, because we're not sure where this may ultimately wind up. Certainly, we do not need a solicitor at this time, but I felt that we should speak to someone, apprise that individual of the background, and have initial feedback. And we did that. I did contact a solicitor that represented us in the Holland Marsh and other contentious projects, you might say. Very, very experienced drainage solicitor. And most of my dialogue was by phone. I did follow up and send substantial data, but I don't believe he's had a chance to pursue it. It's probably intimidating, the amount of data that we sent. But from the verbal telephone call, he believes that we have a very strong case. He believes the drain should continue to remain. And he has indicated that he would be prepared to represent us if and when the time comes. The actual time would not come until a final report is issued and we do not receive the permits to proceed. That's when we would actually need the assistance of a solicitor. But having said that, my oral discussions, and I did speak again today with the solicitor, and he said that we should, or council should either give me an authorization to have my background data read by himself, by the solicitor, or council should, through their staff, have a recommendation or a resolution rather, that he be authorized to pursue the data and give a formal opinion. And I would certainly recommend that, whether it's done through myself or done directly by the municipality, is something that I think we should discuss. Unfortunately, and I think I mentioned this to Mr. Smith, I had a procedure on my eyes yesterday and I'm not able to read as much as I'd like to. And I would like to perhaps read some further data and discuss it with Mr. Schmidt and make a recommendation to council as to how we should continue with the solicitor. I believe that he should be asked to review the data and give us a formal opinion as opposed to just the oral opinion, which I thought was very positive. And he has apparently sent some data with respect to his costs. He is not a Toronto, well, maybe I should be careful. He's not a big city lawyer with big city fees. So I think that's somewhat reassuring. And he is not a solicitor that requires a retainer. If he works with me, I think he trusts the people that I work with. And I think, we don't have to consider a retainer, but there would no doubt be some cost for him to review the various documents that have been going back and forth. And I may want to discuss that with CAO Schmidt and just discuss the correct procedure for having the solicitor review that data at this time, and then be in the wings for when we need them, if we need them.
So before I go to the cards, what is the opinion you'd be recommending to seek from this lawyer?
At this time, that the oral information, I guess, that I've described to him is what he sees and perceives from the written data. I feel that even that last PowerPoint presentation we had would be very informative because that sets out the history. So I think he should see the written documentation and still say that we would have a very supportive case if we had to go through the drainage courts in case we were not able to get the agency approvals.
Okay. Councillor Hannah, Councillor or Deputy Mayor Colgan, and then Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. I would appreciate hearing from Mr. CEO Schmidt as to what point we need to engage a solicitor. I think Mr. Smart's explanation was fine, but giving the recommendation the way it's worded, I got the impression that we would be hiring a solicitor before the meeting happened with the NVCA and any appeal, and I didn't understand that it would be necessary to do that until we know the results of the meeting with the NVCA.
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hannah and members of council. So, further to Councillor Hannah's comment there, I think that probably should be the path is that we do go to the board. We seek their approval and support of Mr. Smart's revised proposal, and subject to that decision, if it's favorable, then obviously I think we proceed. If it's not favorable, then we proceed to retain the solicitor, as Mr. Smart indicated, to essentially provide support and or opinion to hopefully support Mr. Smart's project moving forward. The issue here is that, to Mr. Smart's comments, for whatever reason, one way or another, and we're not 100% sure, is the MVCA staff are not supportive of this work that's being proposed right now to happen. And whether it's because they feel it's too intrusive to the wetlands, which Mr. Smart has indicated that his revised proposal actually should be providing a benefit to the overall wetlands. For whatever reason, I don't know if it's just we're not speaking clearly to them, or we're just not articulating what the benefit is to them. I'm just not sure, but there has been many discussions over the last few months, and again, we've tried to change our approach, and we've tried to come with different options for them, and the answer or the position still appears to be unfavorable. So my suggestion would be is we go to the board, we seek that approval. If we do not get that approval, then we can come back to council and provide an update. And if at that time, you want to wait to consider retaining a lawyer, by all means, we can do that. But I think that's maybe the direction we should go at this stage is allow us to go to the board, try to get their support, and we can determine next steps once we know what their position is. To be quite honest with you, I think we already know what their position is going to be, but I don't believe it's a favorable one. Hence why I believe we were requesting the retaining of a solicitor at this point.
Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
Thank you, Marilyn. And I think this is just a clarification under Section 78. The decision of the NVC or the CA, is there a notice of decision? Like, do they have so many days to make a decision, or do we need to submit a final report in order to trigger a timeline?
Mr. Smart.
Well, under the Drainage Act, if an agency such as the Conservation Authority did not feel the project should proceed, they are to notify the municipality within 30 days of the notice that the municipality is going to do an engineer's report, that they object to that report. Now, there was never a formal letter submitted as far as I know, but there were verbal discussions, presentations, discussions, and those discussions led to the recommendation that an environmental report be prepared. It wasn't as though NVCA said, no, we wanted an environmental study in pursuant to Section 6 of the Drainage Act. It was just agreed that we would do that. And it was understood that if the environmental report came back with no negative implications, that they would work with us. And we did that. And we did the environmental report, and it came back and said the project could proceed with certain conditions, winter work, etc. And no significant impacts would be encountered. And that's been submitted to NVCA, and we had hoped that they would then say, well, that's good, carry on. It doesn't appear as though we're going to object to you doing this preliminary report. We had hoped they would say more. We would hope they would say that, well, when the time comes, we feel we can give you a Section 28 permit. But we really don't know, even what the board tells us, or may tell us in May, whether they will grant us that Section 28 permit when we're ready for it. And we can't apply for it until a bylaw is actually passed. We almost have to complete our reports. Council has to adopt the reports as a bylaw. Then you apply legally for the Section 28 permit. So the board could tell us next month that they're supportive, but they could still change their mind when the final report comes. So, you know, it's hard to predict what may happen, but I don't feel NVCA have said anything at this point that would stop us from proceeding with the reports. They haven't formally objected to it, but they haven't given us sort of their blessings, which we were hoping to receive. So my opinion is that it's really almost in our court now. You know, we have to make the decision if we're going to continue on or not continue on, and be prepared for perhaps a battle if we do carry on. And that's why I had suggested we speak to a solicitor, and you know, how much that solicitor should do right now is not, I guess the work he would have to do right now is not significant. But my opinion is I think we should have a solicitor on board, a good solicitor on board, even though he may not do much for a year or two.
I'll get to you in a second. Did you have a follow-on, Councillor or Deputy Mayor?
And thank you. And that's my concern through you, Mayor Allen, to Mr. Smart, is that we're still talking a year or two down the line, and we've had residents and our agricultural communities waiting already for 2 years, 3 years for this process to continue. And my concern with not submitting the final report is that there's no tangible, there's nothing in writing. This is, you know, we, I think as a municipality, are bending over backwards to work with a conservation authority that isn't, in my opinion, working with us to fix a problem that isn't an easy or timely solution. So to me, it's I want this ball. This ball's been rolling for a long time, and I think until we, from what I'm understanding, we need to submit the final report. I think it's nice that we want to ask for the NVCA's blessing in advance, but as you've suggested, that if they say yes or no on the 28th doesn't indicate we're still going to move forward, from what I understand as a council. So I'm curious as to why we continue to wait for a pre-approval when we're still going to have to ask for a formal approval after.
Mr. Smart?
Well, I could try to address that. I think what we've been trying to do is to find a project that we're most apt to receive approval on. And the work that's been done since the filing of Mr. Shaw's environmental report to the present time has indicated that if we eliminate the work at the Muskrat or River End, it's more apt to be approved. And I felt that if we reduce the working width, which we've just done recently, that it's more apt to be approved. I don't think we can do more now, but the discussions have been fruitful in that they've identified where the path of least resistance may be. There's going to be a path of resistance, but perhaps we've now narrowed it down to the path of least resistance.
And my last one, Marilyn, through.
Yes.
So we, as a council, hopefully with support of council, we go to the MBCA board on the 28th. And if we receive a head nods and approval from the board, we move forward to file a final report. If we don't receive the head nod, there's going to be a subsequent meeting with council. Earlier tonight, you said we either move forward or we don't. And I personally don't see not moving forward as an option. We have an outlet that's closed. The Muskrat Creek is not outletting into the Nottawasaga River. So something needs to be done. We've identified that. We continue to mitigate or to change the course of how we're going to create that solution. But to me, that there is no option of not moving forward. So on the 28th, should the NBCA not give the head nod, would we still then need to file our final report?
Smart.
Well, yes, but before we file the final report, we have to file the preliminary report. Like, I've only been appointed to prepare a preliminary report. Now, it's primarily been written, like, I don't know if you can see it, but this is it. It's some 80 pages. It's been primarily written, but we've been waiting to fine tune what the actual recommendation is. And I think we've got to that point now, regardless of the support we receive on the 28th. It would be great to have NBCA say they do support us. But my personal opinion is that if council wants the Swaley drain done, and I think it should be done, I think we should be proceeding regardless of what we hear on the 28th.
Okay, before I go to Councillor Ritchie, I just want to clarify. My understanding of the discussions that you and CAO Schmidt have had with the MVCA, and I was involved in one of the conferences calls, was that their main reason for not agreeing with the difference in work, the extended work, I will call it, is that they're relying on the previous approval, dated approval from the previous board. And it's not that they have any technical or substantive disagreement with what your recommendations are, or the methodology. And it's not even the dollar aspect. It's that they can't. They've been given the authority by the previous board to accept something, and they want us to go back to the board and them to go back to the board before that can change. So it really just remains for you to present the scientific logic of why your recommendation is the only solution at this point in time. And then I think this is a new board. I think there's a relatively good chance that the board might accept it if you can convince them, because the staff are not coming out with scientific reasons or environmental reasons as to why it shouldn't happen. Is that all correct in your interpretation so far?
Well, I hope you're correct in your evaluation of the board. I would like to see that happen, but I don't know. I don't know how much the board is actually guided by the staff. If the board is prepared to listen to what we present, I believe the project should be approved. Or they aren't going to give us approval. They're just going to say that they'll continue to work with us. I think that's about all they'll say, because they really can't give an approval until they give their permit, which won't happen for some time. So I think we just have to be hopeful that they thank us for what we're presenting, and that they will direct the staff to work with us. And I think if we hear that, then we can proceed knowing that we're not going to have a big battle, hopefully. It doesn't mean, however, and I want to add this, that NVCA is certainly the major agency here, but we also have to ensure that MECP, which is the Ministry of Energy, Culture, and no, I forget what the other
Conservation Parks.
Yeah, parks. Yeah, that they have no major issues. We do not believe they will, because they have assumed MNRF's duties and obligations, and MNRF had no prior strong objections to the project that we're aware of. So we don't believe MECP will, but we still have to be prepared that there could be an issue there. So, you know, even if we do ultimately receive NVCA's Section 28 permit, it doesn't mean that we automatically receive MECP's approval. You know, we believe we should. And also the DFO is out there too, and there's always the possibility that the DFO could object, but we again don't believe they should. They actually will be receiving more fish habitat than what's there now, but you have to be prepared for that. So when we talk about being denied agency approvals at the very end of the project, it may not be just NVCA or only NVCA, or it could be somebody besides or besides NVCA. Maybe we will have NVCAs, but we may not have others. So we have to be prepared for those situations as well.
Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, thank you. Through to Ken Smart. Ken, like, I mean, this has been dragging on for so long. Would it be in our best interest to have the lawyer that you, the one that you just mentioned there, accompany you to the board, excuse me, and between the two of you kind of come up with a game plan to present to the board, whether you speak or whether he speaks, or you let the board know that we've brought our solicitor, we are supportive as a council, we need to move forward with this. Would that help you? And if so, we need to get behind this guy and get that lawyer, and not wait 30 days and another 30 days. Let's do it now and get ready for the 28th and have a real good game plan lined up to get after these guys with. And if that'll help, I put a motion on the floor. Let's get moving on this and get that solicitor involved now.
Mr. Smart, what are your thoughts?
I wouldn't recommend that we take the solicitor at this point, not because of cost, but because of the image, perhaps. I think we should go through the process with the board. I think in my last PowerPoint presentation, which NVCA staff received a copy of, there were new suggestions, I believe, that if we had to defend this before a drainage court of law, we feel we'd be successful. So I feel we've started to sow the seeds that this could, or we anticipate, or are prepared for this to go to court if it has to be. I know NVCA's comments were, or at least their staff comments were more, well, what if some other agency didn't approve it? You know, like, I think they were assuming that we were doing this because of another agency, rather than because of themselves. That's how it came across to me. I don't know if it did to you, Mr. Smith, but that's how I interpret it. So I don't know. I would still like to be able to say we're working with NVCA. I think it's to our advantage. And it may be to our advantage when it comes to any approvals from MECP and from DFO. So I think we should give it this last shot at going to the board before we become too heavy-handed legally. But having said that, I think we should initiate work now. Not a lot of work, but I think we should have somebody lined up and starting to review the data so that when the time comes, and if we need them, we can. We may waste money in paying them some time to review the data, but you know, I don't think it's going to be a big cost, and I think it might be a good step to take. But I'm prepared to talk further to Mr. Smith about that before any formal recommendation is made.
Well, the timing would be such that we really have to decide with respect to the retention of this, or this lawyer at this point, if there's going to be any contribution towards that meeting on the 28th. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you. I think that I myself would like to see the retention of a lawyer until after the meeting, but I would like to see that Ken Smart move forward with finalizing the primary or the preliminary draft of this so that that ball is rolling, because regardless of what comes out of the 28th meeting, we are going to need that report to be finalized so that we can continue to move forward.
Okay. So, Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To Deputy Mayor Coughlin's point, I would recommend that that be put in as an amendment to this main motion.
And as well as an amendment, a stronger expression of our council support with respect to this. I'll give you a moment. CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think if council was to approve the amendment from the deputy mayor, that in itself should show the NVCA that council is supportive of Mr. Smart moving forward with the project. So yeah, again, if it's up to council what you'd like to do, but I think that in itself would show, would demonstrate to the NVCA that council wants to move forward and supports this project moving forward. So I'll leave it to you to decide that.
Thank you. When you're ready, clerk, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Would you like to include?
Well, no, go ahead and do some wording initially with what Deputy Mayor suggested, and if that finesses the support aspect per CEO Schmidt's comments, then all the better.
Okay, thank you. So the motion would read, and that the motion now before council be amended as follows: to add, and that K Smart Associates be directed to proceed in finalizing the preliminary report.
Is that all right with the mover and seconder? Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you. We would require a seconder if Deputy Mayor Coughlin is moving that amendment.
Okay, Councillor Moore. So we have mover and seconder. Can you read the motion again, please? The amendment.
Thank you. And that the motion now before council be amended as follows: add, and that K Smart Associates be directed to proceed in finalizing the preliminary report.
And you're removing the final paragraph, or what was previously the final paragraph about the retained services of a solicitor?
If that is being requested, then I can add that into the amendment.
I believe it was.
Yeah, I would like to see it. That option does stand for council after the 28th, but I don't see the need for it until we have an idea of the NVCA's intention.
Okay, we have a mover and secondary. Everybody clear on this amendment? All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, read the whole motion, please, Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. The motion would read that the report from the drainage superintendent regarding Swaley Drain update dated April 21st, 2021 be received, and that council approve the delegation to the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority board by Ken Smart of K Smart Associates Limited, and that K Smart Associates be directed to proceed in finalizing the preliminary report.
Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Smart. I hope your eyes continue to improve and that you continue to finalize that report and that you're on your A game to convince the board when you come before them.
Well, we'll certainly give it the best shot we can.
I'll see what I can do about talking to some other board members in advance.
Okay.
Thank you,
think
Mr. Smart.
Anything like that would help. Thanks very much. Good night.
Thank you. Okay, so that was 8.2. Now we're moving to 8.4. Which is the protocol and service agreement, Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority and Severn Sound Environmental Association. I have two cards up here. Okay, Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a reminder for a mover and seconder prior to
I
the
was just
discussion.
about to get that, but I had requests to speak up first. So Deputy Mayor Coughlin, it's a mover, and Councillor Ritchie is a seconder. Okay, before we do that, again, CEO Schmidt, can you give us a bit of an update with respect to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as most members may recall, that Township currently does have a memorandum of understanding with the SSEA and the NVCA, and that MOU was executed back in 2016. There is a 5-year window on that agreement, which is that 5-year window closes on September of this year. And so understanding some of the comments that have been made through members of council over the last little bit, and we felt that it would be in the township's best interest to indicate to both parties that the township is interested in opening up this MOU to further discuss and amend where appropriate. And so that's the intent of tonight's motion, is to seek council's direction for staff to be able to do so prior to the expiry in September 2021. So it, subject to that, if you did not provide that direction, essentially clause 5.5 of the agreement stipulates that the agreement as it stands today would just essentially continue to roll forward under the same terms that were agreed upon back in the existing agreement, which I'm not sure that's what council's position is, but I'll leave that to you to decide.
Open this up then, Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm of the mind to defer this and just let it just go to the CEO Smith said of using Article 5, just continue on. I'm not worried about the severance now, but what the MVCA, and the reason for this is the government came out with some new rules there last year, and they've gone behind closed doors to work on it. And I'd like to just defer this or just go with the existing one until these new rules have come out. We have a chance to look at them, and sure that you can give them notice and what have you and renegotiate, but honestly, they don't play fair. And for all it's worth, I think waiting until the government comes out is in our best interest, and then we can take a better look at these new rules and coming out with a better memorandum of understanding, better than the one we have in place as far as that goes. So I would like to see this deferred until the government comes out. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And just for a point of clarification, the MOU that's before us tonight is not the memorandum of understanding between the municipality and the Conservation Authority. This is the memorandum of understanding between the Conservation Authority and the SSEA, which identifies the overlap, or sorry, the identified overlap of service. So by letting this lapse, it does not indicate any core or streamlined mandate from the Conservation Authority. It's of my opinion that when the government or the province does come out with those regulations or changes, we would have an opportunity under a completely separate MOU to identify how the Conservation Authority will serve the municipality. But this is strictly speaking to, I believe it was $7,000 overlap of services between the SSEA and the NVCA.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just further to the comments I think Councillor Ritchie brought forward. I don't disagree, Councillor Ritchie, that we do need to see what the province is going to bring forward as part of this review. My concern is that if we don't indicate that we want to look at this MOU, we could be locked in for another 5 years. So that's my concern is that I'd rather give them some notice now that we do want to speak about it, And maybe the agreement will be is that we park it until the information comes forward from the province, and then we can amend and this MOU and or a new MOU. But my concern would be is that this MOU based on clause 5.5 is essentially going to start over again in September of this year, and you're locked in for 5 years until, unless we all can agree to terminate it or amend it. But I think the clause is that you're essentially locked in for another 5 years.
It just keeps our options alive, basically.
Exactly.
Okay, but it doesn't commit us to take action, but it just preserves our ability to continue to review it, basically. Is that right, CO Schmidt? Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, being that you sit on the MVCA board and they're the ones that gives us the biggest headache, I think it'd only be fair that you sit on that when negotiating these terms.
Sit on the MVCA?
You sit on the board for the MVCA, but to go and have a talk with them about renewing this MOU, it'd be in our best interest to have you there.
Well, I certainly.
Not just staff, but I think there should be a member of council on there as well too.
Well, once the mechanism for doing that is made clear by this committee that we haven't heard from, selected by the province, then we as Springwater Council and other councils will be interested in pursuing the redefinition of the core mandates. And I'd certainly be expecting to be involved with that, and
right.
be looking forward to
good.
that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on this motion before us? Okay, we have a mover and seconder then for this, and the motion is that the report from the clerk regarding the protocol and service agreement, NVCA and Severn Sound Environmental Association dated April 21, 2021 be received, and that council hereby directs staff to commence negotiations with the NVCA and the Severn Sound Environmental Association for renewal of the protocol service agreement for plan review and the provision of additional services, and that the terms of negotiation along with a draft renewal of the agreement be presented to council for approval prior to the expiration of the current agreement. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, we are at item 10, which is verbal reports, starting with the official. Oh yeah, did I miss something?
Yes, information reports, please.
Information reports, yes, sorry.
Excuse me, Mayor. My
Yes,
apologies for interrupting, but I didn't want to see us go past I had a question at 8.5 and I wasn't able to express my question with all the confusion I have trying to read two computers at the same time. I have my question now. If I'd be allowed to proceed, I'd appreciate it.
go ahead, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. 8.5 on the agenda is the additional residential units. There's a report from staff, excellent report, but at item 3.48.3, additional residential units within an accessory building. It's highlighted, changes are in yellow, and I just don't understand it. And so if I just ask the question, got a quick answer, I would sleep better. At subsection A, it says the additional residential unit within a detached accessory building shall not exceed 40% of the total gross floor area of the primary dwelling to a maximum of the permitted accessory building floor area for the applicable zone, or maximum of 115 square feet, brackets 1,238 square feet, whichever is the lesser. So given that you're allowed to be 40%, if you had 1,000 square foot main resident, 40% of that, in my calculations, would be a 400 square foot accessory building you could have, but the report says to a maximum of 115 square feet. So that's where I get confused, and I'd just like a quick explanation, and I'd feel comfortable. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Lisk.
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Hannah. The wording is included as whichever is lesser. So if your dwelling is 1,000 square feet, you would be subject to the 40% rule. The reason why the wording is in there is to allow a larger unit should your primary dwelling be larger, and it still caps you to that accessory building size. So I know there's a lot in there, but we've looked at it numerous times to ensure that you will be capped at your accessory building size or that 40% rule, whichever is less. If I hope that helps.
I'm sorry, but no, I get confused where it says to a maximum of 115 square feet.
So the 115 square, it's actually square meters. I corrected it in the actual bylaw. That's the cap for an accessory building in an agricultural zone. So the maximum for any additional unit would be 1238, but you still have to be within that agricultural zone. So for a residential property, say a R1 zone, like in Midhurst, the cap is 699 square feet or 40% of that primary dwelling. So there's different accessory building maximums depending on the zone of the property. That 1238 is the maximum size, but you have to be within that agricultural zone.
So follow up if I may, Mayor. So when it says 115 square feet, that's a typo. It should say 115 square meters.
Yes, that's correct. If you open the bylaw that will be passed hopefully tonight, I did correct that typo.
Yes, because I'm reading it right now and it says 115 square feet, not meters. So thank you for telling me that's a typo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good get, Councillor Hannah. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Planner Lisk. I wasn't going to ask this question, but now that Councillor Hannah brought it up, I might as well. Beneath that, though, in section B, when you talk about the area being utilized, you say that it includes parking spots. So I just wondered, how does that fall under the maximum square footage rule? And how many parking spots? And that is confusing for me.
Planner List?
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Allen. To Councillor Moore. That would include any parking areas within the building. And that's only for if it's an accessory building. For example, if you had a detached garage with a loft area above, both levels of that building would be included in that floor area. So that's why it's referring to parking areas, because we want to include that parking area because the massing of that building is going to be a lot larger, and we still want them to be capped with that accessory building size.
Okay, so if we go back to our example of 1,000 square foot residence, our accessory building would be allowed 400 square feet if the zoning was correct. And that would be 200 below and 200 above if parking was below?
Yes, you're correct. If they wish to do that, we would include both levels of that building, or they do have the option of just building a 400 square foot unit without that parking.
Right, correct. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, good clarification. So we are at item 9, information reports. Can I have a mover and seconder to get this on the table, please? Councillor Cabral and Councillor Ma. Are there any questions with respect to these? All right, the motion is that the report items listed herein be received as information bylaw activity report for March 2021. Waterfront parking options for Springwater residents. SU 2021-001 and ZB 2021-001, Old Second South 3024. All those in favor? That is carried. On to verbal reports, official plan update and economic development update. Director Spagnell.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The only thing I'd like to update council on is that staff continues to work through the outreach program for the official plan review. The next meeting is scheduled to be with Planning Advisory for next week to try to compile the comments from that committee. And then also planning will be meeting with the Committee of Adjustment to compile comments from that committee so that it can all be forwarded on to WSP for consideration as part of the background studies and the outreach program. Thank you.
Thank you. Midhurst development update, CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council. So not much of an update here today, but the developers continue with their internal servicing for the subdivision and also the external lands, the utility campus, as I mentioned before, they have been prepared and cleared for earthworks to commence. And also staff and our consultants continue to work with the developer and with the intent of bringing the external works agreement to council for your consideration on April 26th. That's really my update for Midhurst tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, and COVID updates, CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I apologize if something's changed, but things seem to be changing by the minute as it relates to COVID over the last year, but more so in the last couple of days here. So my apologies if I misspeak, but as most of you are aware, last Friday, the province did announce that the stay-at-home order and the declaration of emergency would be extended for an additional 2 weeks. So right now we're looking at May 20th. The township did issue a media release yesterday advising residents of these new restrictions, and they include but are not limited to outdoor gatherings are strictly limited to members of the same household or with one other household if the individual lives alone. In-person shopping at stores that primarily sell food, pharmacy, or groceries are restricted to 25% capacity. Only essential construction is permitted to continue at this time. So this does include critical infrastructure such as new hospitals, roads, and bridges. So the township can continue with such as St. Vincent Street Bridge and other roads projects. Outdoor recreational amenities, including sports fields, outdoor fitness equipment, and basketball courts are closed. Yes, outdoor fitness equipment, I'm sure there's some questions about that. That's what the province tells us. So indoor participation at places of worship and like funerals and weddings has been restricted to 10 people. And further to that, as a result of these new enforcement measures specific to the township, all of our facilities do remain closed to the public. Staff are available to provide assistance by phone and email. All township sports fields, basketball courts, tennis courts, pickleball courts, outdoor fitness equipment, and outdoor pavilions are currently closed to the public. Playgrounds will remain open, and they are open right now for public use. And we are advising that the public that our playground equipment is not sanitized. Building inspections that do not meet provincial criteria have been suspended, as well as our township public libraries continue to operate under a curbside pickup format. As it relates to vaccines, this is, again, Councillor Moore, if I missed something here, please let council know. But so as of yesterday, Tuesday, April 20th, individuals age 40 and over are able to obtain the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine at a participating pharmacy or primary care setting. For a list of eligible pharmacies, one can look to the province's website. Midhurst Pharmacy on Carson Road and Whitfield Guardian in Elmville, I believe, are currently accepting appointments for this. Effective today, 20 Shoppers Drug Mart locations, including 16 in the hotspot communities of Toronto, Peel, and York region, will begin offering the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine 24/7 to individuals age 40 and over. And when the province begins to receive more supply, it will expand this program to additional hotspot areas. In addition, the province is now enabling pharmacies to offer walk-in services. Residents of Ontario should contact participating pharmacies to inquire as to whether they are offering vaccines by appointment or by walk-in and or both. Further to that, individuals age 60 and over are able to book an appointment on the provincial booking system or call the vaccine booking line. To note, when booking, people do need to make sure that they book both their appointment for dose 1 and 2 in order for their booking to be successful. I've been advised that if you only book for dose 1 and you exit the page, your booking is not complete. So just a comment on that. Those individuals in the highest risk health condition category plus one essential caregiver may now also book an appointment by calling the provincial booking line. As well, eligible special education workers can register by calling again the province's booking line. And as of April 9th, residents age 50 and over living in hotspot postal code L3Z, which I'm familiar with because I used to live there, Bradford, we're able to book appointments through the provincial booking website. Those are the updates I have on the vaccine. Schools, as we know, schools are closed for in-person learning until further notice. And as of yesterday, Springwater has had 237 confirmed cases of COVID, which is an increase of approximately 24 cases since my last update. 208 have now recovered. 1 is in hospital and 2 have passed. And Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments for this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie.
Mayor Allen, I just want to point out while we're talking about the COVID-19, 2 weeks ago, I got into Whitfield's here, the pharmacy in Elmville, got my AstraZeneca shot. I didn't even know I had it. The guy's as smooth as glass. So if you're looking for a place to get in, call them. They're doing a fantastic job. That's Whitfield's Pharmacy. Come on up. We'll take your money.
Did you, money. They took money from you, Councillor?
No, they didn't take any money, but that's just a little plug for Elmville. Come on up. We'll look after you.
Did you book online or did you just walk in or what did you do?
What happened was my brother came in and told me that he had just got it done, and that was on a Tuesday. So the next day, on the Wednesday, I believe we had council. I went into the drugstore and I told them, I said, look, I'd like to get my name on the list. They said, sure, no problem. They said, there's about 300 in front of you, but if we get a cancellation, can you come? I said, yeah. It was late Friday afternoon. I got a call. I went in Saturday morning, got it done. So just real good.
Good.
Come on up, we'll look after you.
Any other questions of CAO Schmidt on this matter? Okay, 10.5 county updates, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. And through you, I believe in the last update, I didn't officially update, but I did want to let council know that in our preceding meeting, there was a vote of council not to continue on the path of reducing the size of county council. So that will no longer be on the table for this term of this council anyway. So that was a significant decision made. So the service delivery review committee is still meeting and are still looking into different areas of that. But aside from that, that is all I have to report.
Okay, item municipal updates, 10.6. Anybody have municipal update? Okay, item 11, notice of motion. Any notices of motion? Item 12, item for future consideration. Any items for future consideration? Item 13.1, could I have a mover and seconder for the bylaws, please? Councillor Cabral and Councillor Ma, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. 2021-039 Heritage Designation Midhurst Community Center, 74 Doran Road. Number 2, 2021-040 amend off-road vehicles bylaw 2020-013 and definitions of ORM and XTV. And number 3, 5000-321 zoning bylaw amendment re additional residential units, ZB 220-006. All those in favor? That is carried. Confirmatory bylaw, mover and seconder, please. Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Cabral, that the bylaw 2021-041 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at regular meeting held on April 21, 2021, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? It is carried. And mover and seconder to adjourn, please. Councillor Ritchie and Councillor Ma, that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 8:11 p.m. to meet again. Regular meeting May 5th, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Have a good rest of the evening and take care.